Yeah. All right. Greetings and welcome once again. My name is Imuna Yisrael, and this is Solonomics 101. And we're on the line with Sister Mayanah Johnson. All praise be to the Most High. Welcome back again, Sister Mayanah. I look forward to this very interesting conversation we're about to have.
Shalom, absolutely.
Ken, I was this whole Google Live thing. I'm like, you know what? Sometimes I was just telling Sister Mayana, sometimes we just got to do it as the Spirit is leading, just to have the conversation. For those who are tuning in, I'm quite sure that there is a text box on the side. If you have any questions, feel free to text them in. So today we're going to talk a little bit about, are you covered? And this is as it pertains to the daughters of Zion. This is this is as it pertains to women at this case. So men, please don't get all riled up. It's all good. We're just having a nice, lovely discussion. But the question is, does a woman, does being a woman stop your spiritual calling? There was a question that came up in something I did recently. I thought it was interesting. And I posed the question to Sister Mayanah. She said she experienced it. And basically, I was sharing my studies and the things that I've learned. And instead of addressing the topic of the conversation, one sister just came out and started asking about my husband. She started asking, am I under my father? And I thought that was strange yet interesting. And I posed the question to Sister Mayanah to see if she had experienced anything of that nature. And she said all the time. So I'm going to give her an opportunity to share what it is that she experienced in the realm of when you're sharing information one to another. The first question, or a pressing or reoccurring question, is where is the masculine principle that you submit to? So Sister Mayanah, the mic is yours.
Indeed, that is a highly recurring instance that when discussing what our Father has put before us, what our Father has reported for us, and having those conversations and sharing that information, it's not uncommon to have the question posed, who is your husband? Are you married? And questions of that nature, not only from men where you would expect it, but from women as well. Which means, or what signals to me, is that women have internalized this idea that women do not have the ability to, basically be literate, because this is in the book. It's a matter of reading and having comprehension and having a relationship with our Father. So basically, women have internalized the notion that that cannot occur independent from men.
That's interesting that you said that, because I think that as I'm looking over the Torah, as I'm looking over the Tanakh, I see where a cultural practice, if it relates today without the understanding, for instance, it not only would say, Deborah, the wife of Lapidot, right? For instance, it will also say Jesse, the son of David. So it was a cultural practice to attribute the individual to the lineage of which they came from. And one would make it seem as though, I think the disparity for me comes when someone also doesn't say to the masculine energy, okay, quantify where you're from. So I think it goes over from not just saying, okay, this is the way in which we would identify one another, to this is only the way that you should identify, because there's some doctrines and teachings out there that you shouldn't even be speaking right now. I mean, that's how I received it. How do you usually process that?
That's correct. It's correct. And what you're touching on is important, that yes, how we are understood by others in our culture is always in association with who our family is. And like you said, that's not unique to womanhood. That is something that is practiced according to how the men self-identified and were understood by others. You were understood according to your family. That's cultural, like you stated. And just to give, you and I are accustomed to doing things cross-culturally and being able to show how that's important. I'll give you an example from another culture, which is foreign as any foreign culture. But what comes to mind, for example, is that we call ourselves Afro-Asiatics. And in the Asian culture, for example, the last name is first. It's not last, it's first. You're known by your family name first. Your personal identity is not as important as your clan identity. So and that was because it keeps the individual accountable to their family's integrity. So whenever you go out into the world, you introduce your family first. You are necessarily saying to the world, I represent this family. So
Oh,
you are always burdened with the understanding that everything you do reflects on your family. So in that same way, um, everybody in our culture is like stated, so and so, the son of, and in some cases, all the way back to the patriarchal branch until we get to Judah. I think there's one of our, because I can't remember the example, I should have looked it up before we started this live, but there's an example of one of our men having 7 designations all the way, even his father, that father, the father before him, all the way to Judah. And that's how it was designated. This person, son of this person, son of that person, son of this person, until we get to Judah. To establish that who you are, who that person is, before his individual identity, he belongs to this branch. So that you understood where everything is coming from and what it's really supposed to go back to.
agreed. As you were speaking, I have to agree that certain things culturally, when we take it out of context, it allows for certain different ideologies that are limiting. And as you were speaking, like you said, culturally, if we look in, just for an example, in the book of Genesis, Bereshit 34, it says, and Dinah, the daughter of Leah. You understand what I'm saying? And so there's always, like you're saying, who do you belong to? Who is your lineage? Who is your father? And in some cases, who is your mother? You understand what I'm saying? As they're reading back the genealogy. So I necessarily didn't take offense to the question. I just thought the question was particular because the individual only pointed out the woman who was in the conversation and never did it in the sense of, okay, well, who are these people, period. It's more like, are you submitted to a righteous husband, or are you under the covering of a household? So today I wanted to talk about covering, because that's the Are You Covered is the name of the cast. And I thank Sister Mayanah once again for joining us. Are you covered? And I wanted to take a look at that word and see, because there's like I said, there's a lot of different doctrines. So if those who are listening, or if you're listening in the future, please drop the information there. I'm personally not saying yes or no, that there is not supposed to be a covering, but we wanted to look today a little bit into this covering and what is it made up of? Is it in its entirety on all levels, physical, mental, spiritual, emotional? What part does the person become a level of an autonomous being, or are they just the feminine principle? Is she not, what's the word I'm looking for? If she does not have a husband, if she's not yet married, is she, what's the word I'm looking for here? Is she lacking greatly? And is that the same thing for a man as well? If he's not married, if he's not with a feminine principle, are they not still accountable before the Most High? I think that's really where I'm going here. So, Sister Mayanah, you ready?
Yeah, let's go ahead.
Okay, so the word cover, what comes to mind, to your mind, when you hear the covering, or does the sister have a covering? What comes to your mind?
Well, when I'm confronted with that language, the understanding for me is immediately whether or not she's in Torah. Because Torah covers everybody. There's a lot of discussion about which doctrine people adhere to, but all of us are or should be Torah centered. Because at the end of the day, what covers all of us spiritually is Torah. And I think that's where we get into confusion, is because this word spiritual is being used by a lot of people to mystify the process. There's the idea of, okay, is she covered? Okay, it depends on what you're talking about. Is she covered in terms of the physical aspect, which is where the men are important, where our male kin are important, be they biological or in this truth, that physical masculine presence is important for that physical covering. That's the realm that they occupy, and that's the realm in which they can cover. For example, if an unmarried woman is being considered by a man, that man should not have direct access to her. That man should have a space of accountability. Ideally, he should go through her male care. When we see what happened with and throughout scripture with our sisters and our foremothers, those things were negotiated by brothers and husbands, and not husbands, brothers and fathers. If you wanted to select a woman, you went to her father. If you met with her brother first, her brother would take you to her father. If there was an issue, her brothers would intercede for her. These are all physical things. These are not spiritual things.
Okay, you make an excellent point. That's an excellent point. And I like to say it often that I like to watch cultural movies. You understand what I'm saying? And the point that you're making is so far removed from our culture. Like it's saying that covering or that wall of protection that protects her from being violated, that protects her from being not from being abused or misused. That is one physical aspect of the male covering, you know, because she's a delicate flower, she's precious. The feminine energy needs a gate around it. I believe in one space in Isaiah, the Most High talks about the daughter of Zion sitting on the ground, you know, like what's the word it used again? I don't want to misquote it, but basically it was saying that the hedge of protection was removed from around her, and she was just open to the elements, basically, of anything that can happen to her. So I agree, that is one physical aspect of how a male or the masculine energy, brothers, uncles, fathers, and the masculine energy are supposed to protect. Let's talk about, and you brought it up a little earlier before we came on, that protection as it related to Dinah, the daughter of Leah, and her brothers. Can you touch a little bit on that as we're talking about are you covered, and the masculine energy and how it relates to that question that people often ask, well, where's your husband or where's your father?
Well, we see that in the case of Dinah, when she is when she finds herself in a circumstance where she has been defiled by a man of Shaphan. And what happens is that and I think that's important, this is a side note, that scripture describes that sexual encounter as defilement and not marriage. She was not married because she had sex, she was defiled because she had sex. And the order was not observed. That man did not go through the proper channels. That man did not go through her covering. That man did not talk to her father. That man did not discuss anything with the other males that were responsible for her protection. So he does that, but he does it out of sequence. He understands that in order to legitimately claim her, he has to go through the appropriate process and goes to the father and says, request of me any dowry, any so much dowry for your daughter, so that, but give her to me. You know, there's the understanding that he cannot take her. She must be given to him. She must be allowed. She has to leave one household to enter another household, because there are those layers of protection, that hedge that you spoke of. There's a hedge around her. You don't snatch up a daughter of Israel. That's not how things go down.
Correct. So
that example happens there. This example of how our brothers intercede for us, even with Rebecca. When Rebecca is found at the well, her brother catches that. Is that first line of defense. He sees him. Where are you going with my sister? The offer is first presented to him, and then it goes to the father. And the father, these men sit around and discuss what the terms of agreement are for Rebecca. She does not get hemmed up at the well, and since the guy found her, that I can take you away because you are a woman without protection. That's not the case. Women have protection, and I think that the men are misinforming women about what their roles are. Yes, there is a role of authority, but there's that role of accountability. Their purpose is to protect us. They're not to oppress us. When we look at David's daughter Tamar, there are two.
Sister Mayanah, you talking about?
Oh, brother Absalom is the one that snatches that up. He's the one that intercedes. You have defiled my sister. That's a problem for me. When David didn't step up and defend his daughter, her brother did. because women are protected spaces, and men in our culture used to understand that.
Okay. So right now we're on the line with Sister Mayanah. My name is Amuna Yisrael, and we're having this conversation about covering and really getting a redefined perspective of what it means and what it actually looks like, as everyone likes to say, culturally. Culturally, your protection, the man's protection from what we're learning from the text. And by the way, that word is casa. It's funny when I looked it up, I'm like, because years ago I started a clothing line called Casa. And when I looked it up, I'm like, duh, Muna, casa means covered pain. So the word covering is casa. And oftentimes it, you know, in layman's terms or physical terms, it has to do with clothing that's going to protect you from the outside elements. Really, just if we want to boil it down basically. So we're hearing how, as it relates to the feminine principle, how the masculine principle is supposed to protect her from outside elements, from other people and situations that wants to defile her or to make her less than. So as we continue on, this is getting very interesting. As we continue on, can we say now spiritually, before we even get to spiritually, emotionally, is he totally responsible for protecting her, or is that her responsibility to guard her heart? Like when it says guard your heart, for out of it is the wellspring of life, is that only applicable to the man, or does that relate to the woman? Like who's responsible for her guarding her emotional well-being?
I think that that responsibility is two-pronged. In the point where, at the stage where she has submitted to her husband, she is necessarily in a state of vulnerability. He has to take responsibility for that vulnerability. He has to acknowledge and accept that she is necessarily putting herself in a position where he could hurt her. Because if she is too guarded and she is not allowing herself to be vulnerable, not allowing herself to fully submit to his expectations, the one that is very often given to us is in Genesis, where her desire has to be to her husband. So again, that points to a certain degree of vulnerability. To what extent is she still responsible for her own sanity and safety? That sanity and safety would have had its nexus, its beginning, if she did not come in with the idea that she's a wife. She has to come in with the idea that she's a daughter. If she understood her identity as a daughter of the Most High, then that's where that guard would come from. It wouldn't come from I'm opposing my husband. Instead, it's I'm protecting my daughterhood. And I think that a lot of that comes from there.
You just brought up a good point as you were speaking, that it came to my mind, that the first, she has to feel secure. When I asked about the emotional covering, she has to feel a level of security for her to be in the role of submission, to now allow the masculine principle to also guard her emotionally. Like if you fail at the first stage, then chances are the second stage, she's not going to be in that trusting position to give you what it is, or the masculine principle, what he's looking for. I thought that was interesting. Can you speak to the emotional or the mental well-being of Ima, Raquel, or Rachel when it is that she could not bear seed and she was looking to Jacob or Yaakov? She was looking to him for that emotional reassurance. When she said, give me seed, lest I die, she said. And his response to her was kind of like, I'm not responsible for that. Do I give seed? Am I the Most High unto you?
Yeah.
That one is like, okay, I want the responsibility, but now you're giving me too much responsibility. And so that's why I'm asking, is there a fine line between, and I saw that you just put a very interesting post up. If everybody hasn't seen it, please check that post up, because it's deep. But is there a fine line between giving the emotional well-being over to the man, between that and idol worship? Is there a fine line between submission and idol worship?
Absolutely. Women are consistently blurring that line. There is the line that you go to your husband for particular reassurances, for particular security. And then when it's the point where you are elevating him to the tasks of the Most High, then you are creating um, you're creating a situation between you and your husband. It's going to have predictable consequences. He cannot fulfill those expectations, and she's going to push against it. On the one hand, he wants to be considered. You hear a lot of a certain number and a particular type of man, Hebrew man, who enjoys being called Lord. They enjoy being called Master. They want to be called King. But when you have that expectation for them to fulfill certain duties,
they
pull back.
can.
Pull back. They don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear that. All of a sudden, these responsibilities, that's not my job. I can't do it. Don't ask me for it. Be quiet.
So what is going on in this realm? Again, for those who have just joined us, we're talking about Are You Covered? We're talking about the woman's role and the thought process and the teaching and the doctrines that her covering is. I don't even know, for those who are out there who have that, even to clarify for me, because sometimes I'm a little bit confused on how far this covering goes. And this is what we're discovering today. Spiritually, and we were talking about this a little before we came on air. Spiritually now, this covering, where it, like in your words, as it gets more mystical, and we were going over a little bit about some of those spiritual responsibilities. Can we continue to take a look at that on air as what could be some of, and what are some of the spiritual responsibilities of the man? And can he necessarily save your soul? Can he save your soul, or is it something that you have to do for yourself?
I agree with you. This is exactly what we were talking about, because a lot of this language is borrowed from church. A lot of this language is borrowed from our exposure to religion. So we start talking about spirit, and the way churches use spirit is they use it to mystify concepts that they don't want to explore or explain to you. Oh, that's spiritual. You don't know the answer to that because you're not being spiritual. This idea that spiritual is something that is outside of you. Now, it is to say that this is why it was good for you to say we need to have this be open, because I don't know what they're thinking of either when they say spiritual. I think that they are borrowing language, and I think it would be interesting to hear, or I think it would be a good exercise for these women to take a piece of paper and divide it down the line and say, okay, well, when I say spiritual, I mean this, 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 and this. When I think carnal or physical, I think this, and this.
Yes.
And then look at this line. Look at what they have divvied up. And if the things they have listed on the spiritual side are attributes that belong to the Most High, they should not be giving it to a man. Any male, any elder, any sister, any brother, no dog, no cat should have anything that belongs to the Most High. If it's a physical thing, when I think of carnal protection, I think of a man interceding for me, negotiating for me, protecting me, providing for me, speaking with me. If he knows more than me, building with me. Those are physical, practical. That's the word that you used previously, practical. These are practical things that a man can do in practice. When I think about spiritual are the things that have to do with my salvation, that have to do with my intimacy and relationship with the Most High. Does a man have any space to dictate or design or decide my personal intimate relationship with my Father? Now that's what you have to ask.
Can you give something concrete when you say that? And again, we're going to touch on some of the things that have been said, but when you say that, whether or not a masculine principle has the right to, for instance, pray, does the husband or a father have the right to intercede into the prayer life and say that the daughter or the wife cannot pray?
Absolutely not. Men do not dictate your communications with your own father. That is the most absurd, unfounded, countercultural concept that is being forwarded in our community and fed to our sisters, and worse yet, accepted by our sisters. To have a woman call me and say, sis, can you pray for me? My husband said that I can't. That is one of the most painful things I've ever heard a sister say to you.
So, okay, that, right. I've heard the dictations of prayer, which is the communication, when you can pray, how you can pray. And this is Sister Mayanah sharing. I asked her for some concrete examples in her estimation of the overview that she just gave. So what about reading your Bible, or reading? How far does the covering or the submission to your husband dictate your ability to read?
Literacy is not unlawful. Even if the brothers want to tell you or limit to whom you can share information, literacy is not unlawful. You are allowed to read. In fact, the purpose of reading is so that you can become intimately familiar with the laws, the ethos, the ethics, the poetry, the prophecy, and the history of our people. And that is something that every daughter of Israel would have had access to. She would have had access to that long before she became the wife of someone else. So that is not dictated, predicated, or dependent on any man, because she would have already had access to it. When we talk about the anthology, when we talk about the canon, when we talk about the Bible, what we are talking about is a present day representation of accumulated information and facts. That's what we have in it. Right now, we have it in book form. In previous time, these are the lives, times, and experiences of these women. You were not going to tell Ima Sarah that she can't know the things that she knew. You were not going to tell Ima Raquel that she cannot know the things that she was living, experiencing. It's a book for us. And yes, we don't have the privilege and the luxury of having been raised in this culture, the privilege of having been raised in this culture, but our ancestresses did not have the luxury of an indexed canon either. Like, we can sit here, we have it all nicely indexed and organized and numbered. They didn't have that. They had to live that, pay attention when it was read to the congregation, because when it was the Torah, everybody wasn't literate. Only a particular class was literate. So when it came time to know Torah, someone stood up and read to every man, every woman, and every child. So the children and the women and the men all learned at the same time. There was no, I'm going to tell him and he'll come back and tell you. That didn't happen. It was read to the congregation. When Moses came down from Sinai, he read to everybody. Everybody heard it.
Very interesting point that you make. Very interesting point that you make. As we're here, for those who just tuned in, we're talking live to Sister Mayanah. We're just having a little live session because this was something that apparently comes up time and time again, especially in a time where the roles and the understanding of your duty, not only to man, but onto the Creator, is kind of blurred based on those who are disseminating the information, and based on the fact that there has to be a fine line, because the moment someone begins to speak that is of a feminine persuasion, it can be perceived as feminism or feminist, understand? And then on the other side, we have misogyny and this masculine, overly masculine, testosterone loaded doctrine. And so there's a fine line, and this is where we're trying to find the balance. So for myself personally, go ahead. I'm speaking about, I'm all about healing and restoration. In order to do that, we have to be honest about where we are and be willing to look at everything that we have been told and serve and make sure that it is in right, proper order. I think it's interesting as we go now a little bit over to some scriptures as it relates to covering. As we said, someone please, if you're out there and you would like to tell us exactly what that means. We're talking right now, we spoke about spiritual. One of the things I was saying earlier is that the spiritual covering has a lot to do with even the requirements within the law that says 3 times a year, every man appear in the place that the Most High has put his name. And if the woman could not appear, whether it be because she was childbirth or whether it be because she was unclean, that man was a spiritual, because she wasn't physically there, representation or a covering over his family to indicate that they had kept the law that year. And we see that in the book of Samuel, 1 Samuel, when it talks about Hannah. And when Hannah prayed and she would go up from year to year to Shiloh. But this particular time, once she had Samuel, she denied from going or deferred from going until it was the time that she had promised that she would give him over. But in that time, Elkanah still represented the family on a spiritual level. What do you have to say about that, sister?
I was agreeing with you that he's there, and he was, and it's spiritual, but more than that, like you said before, it's practical.
Yeah,
it was something that he did in a physical way. So like you said, she couldn't physically appear, but when they speak about a spiritual covering, he wasn't covering her spirit. He was covering her physical obligation to appear. Okay. So he physically appeared on her behalf, but he could not spiritually intercede for her. If there was something that she needed to do, she needed to do that. There is no one who can take that hit for you. If you cannot, for example, if a woman does something unrighteous, the righteousness of her husband is not going to cover her. She needs to be on point. And I'll give you an example in Susanna. Susanna would have been part of the book of Daniel had it been left in the anthology, had it been left as part of the canon that we're familiar with. It would have been found in the book of Daniel. So we find Susanna. She's a married woman. She's obviously the daughter of somebody. She finds herself in a situation where male elders have decided that because they wanted this married woman, they were going to approach this married woman. This woman is alone in her garden, in her husband's house, alone in her garden, and she's confronted with this proposal. The men say to her, either you sleep with us or you deny us, and we'll say you slept with somebody else. So she comes to she rightfully concludes, I'm in a bad situation either way. Because if I sleep with you, I go against the law. I go against what the Most High has told me is right. I go and I will die, because the penalty for adultery is death. It's not divorce, it's death. You commit adultery, you die. She understood the law. Now, she's saying, so if I do this with you, I will go against what my father expects of me. If I don't do this, I fall into the hands of men and you kill me. She decides that she's going to trust the law.
Yes.
What happens is these men do what they say they're going to do, and they accuse her of doing something she had not done. And she has fallen into the judgment and in the hands of men. The men decide they're going to kill her. At this trial, her husband is present, her father is present, but neither one of them can cover the situation because it is a spiritual thing that she has been accused of violating. She's accused of adultery with some guy that they, according to these men, have snuck in, and she has done this inappropriate sexual act with this guy. So that's something that has to do with the law. This is a spiritual infraction. It's something that these men cannot cover. Her husband is a high-ranking official, and him being a high-ranking official does not cover the spiritual thing she's being accused of. Her father not interceding at all. So does Susanna say, but look at my husband will cover me? Does she say, look at my father's a good guy, he's right there? No, she immediately goes to her father, directly to her father in prayer.
That's a very interesting point you brought out in Susanna. So for what I'm hearing is, because sometimes, and I've had this conversation, like you said earlier, it is one is being convinced that you should relinquish all of your rights, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, to me. At the same time, I do not have the ability as the masculine principle to really cover you, but I need you to be in total submission so that I can do what I need to do. But when it comes time to pay the piper, you should have known that some things you're responsible for.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
And I've heard this and experienced this in conversation in times past. And it's like, wait a minute, you need to understand at what point, like you're saying, the husband could not have stood in that stead for her. She had to go to the Creator, because the Creator that is the only one now who's going to be able to say yay or nay, this woman is innocent or this woman is not, because we have two false witnesses who has arise against her to say, look, she has done this act. So I think that was a very good example to show that the soul that's sinning, whether it be a masculine soul or a feminine soul, that soul shall die. You understand what I'm saying? And the thought is, no, I will take your death. But the reality is when, and this is just my observation of, and I'll go back a little bit to Raquel, is that when Rachel said, what came out of the mouth of Jacob when Laban came and looking for the teraphim, when he came looking for the idols, he said, no one has it. And then he pronounced something out of his mouth, that person who is found with, that person shall die. Yeah. Later on, Rachel, who actually had it, she said it actually twice out of her mouth. She proclaimed, give her children lest she shall die. And then he said that based on another thing. And Jacob, be how much has he loved her, he could not take what was to come onto her off of her. She had to deal with what she did, and she had to deal with the things that came forth from her mouth. So, and we see it on the other side as well. For instance, in the case of Abigail and Nabal. Nabal was, it says, a curlish man or a foolish man, like his name, Nabal. Nabal, Abigail's intelligence or her wisdom could not necessarily take away, although she did cover him. And in that instance, she covered him. You understand what I'm saying? She covered the household by using her wisdom to go and beseech David to say, hey, don't do what you're about to do. Right. You understand? So it goes both ways. And I was looking at how it speaks about in the book of the Proverbs 12 and 4. And we could go there for a quick second, where it talks about the wise woman being a crown to her husband. If you could remember that scripture, give me 1 second. I'm gonna go there. Because I think it's interesting that her wisdom as well can help to cover, not necessarily, and we see that also in the case of Jael. We see it in the case of when it is that her wisdom, when the king who they were looking for came into onto her, it was her wisdom that covered the nation, in the sense that she did what she needed to do in taking out that sorry, 1 second. In 12 and 4, and this is the words of Solomon. We have to take all things in context, but this is in the words of Solomon. It says, a virtuous woman is a crown to her husband, but she that make ashamed is rottenness to his bones. And I thought that was interesting for the conversation, as a crown covers the head. Yeah. And so it speaks of her being also a covering. In righteousness, she can cover him in righteousness and aid him. Sarah covered Abraham. And we had that conversation earlier this week. But he asked her to cover him, to save him from death. What do you say about that?
So I wanted to look again at Abigail, because you're right that she intercedes where her husband has not. Now let's look at her husband as a covering. Her husband is not sufficient covering for her. The fact is that, like we discussed at the top of this conversation, with all of these people who want to come and confirm our ability to speak on behalf of our Father based on the proximity of the nearest penis to us, right? Because if I'm married, that means I have, if you ask me, are you married? I say yes, I'm official. And no one cares whether or not this guy is on point. Nobody's going to ask any further questions. How long has he studied the truth? What does he know about the truth? How good is he? None of that. All you want to know is, am I getting penis? If I'm getting penis, I'm good to go. That's what you want to know.
Before we go, I'm sorry. Why do you think that is, or do you not know why?
I honestly believe that it's because of the fact that we have been, a certain number of us have been taught that understanding comes through men, that the Most High deals with men, that the Most High, that you are as valuable as you are according to your attachment to other men, and because they're not taught to value themselves or their relationships with the Most High or their identity as separate from wifehood. these identities of daughterhood, sisterhood, and womanhood are diminished and devalued and thrown into the shadows or put up on the shelf. So instead of understanding the worth of those stages, they only understand themselves as it associates to the masculine principle. But when we see with Abigail specifically, this is a married woman. Her husband did not cover her. She had to be responsible for what was going to go down, because now she's the one that goes to David. And when it's important to look at the language that David gives to her when he sees her. He says to her that the Lord has sent you to me. So that's not something that's insignificant. When he sees her, he doesn't say, wow, your husband taught you well. Wow, you must come from a really good family. He says, I see the Most High in you. I know that you're here because of your relationship to the Most High and his relationship with you, that he sent you here. So the person that the spirit that was moving in that situation, the spirit that David identified, was not her husband, was not her brothers, and was not her father. The spirit that he identified in that woman and her right and ability to talk to him, because this is David now. David now is king of Hebron. He's not someone that you can just roll up on because you feel like it. And he didn't say, where's your husband? Who are you talking to? He didn't say, where are your brothers? Where's your father? He saw the Most High. He said, I understand that it is the authority of the Most High that is speaking in you right now. He saw that, and I don't understand why we don't understand that when the women are speaking about Torah, when women are speaking about the prophets, and women are speaking about the history and the records of our people, we are discussing either A, our shared heritage, or B, the authority of the Father. There is no one else's authority at play here.
And I think that's an interesting point that you just made right there. And that is that if the conversation is not a wayward one, and if the conversation is not one that is leading people away from the Creator, and if the conversation is not, usurp authority over everyone, then why, if the conversation is righteous, like you're saying in this instance, why do so many go automatically to disqualify you if you did not get this information? It's like we're looking, so to say, at the messenger and not the message. You know what I'm saying? So as long as you're a woman, even if the conversation is on the up, like in the case of Abigail, the conversation was on the up and up. It was a legitimate conversation. This conversation had to do with what he was about to do. You understand? And oftentimes, and we see it, and I'm trying to see if this is a new thought or if this is a thought that came from our interpretation or understanding of culture and the Torah, because oftentimes in the Torah, for instance, in the case of Deborah, let's say, and she was a judge, I think it's very interesting to note that when you read in that passage in the chapter, there was wickedness in the earth. Okay, it wasn't like the children of Israel were doing righteously, and so she was judging Israel. And my question is, I don't see it in the text, but from what I'm receiving from the people today, it's like, by what authority are you speaking? You know what I'm saying? By whose authority are you speaking? Are you speaking with permission? And the question is, if it is that you have gotten something from the Creator to share, do we need to speak by permission if the truth is just the truth? Do you understand? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Well, if we're speaking the truth, then we have permission. We are speaking on the authority of the Most High. The Most High is the leading authority, the final word. And if we are repeating the words of our fathers, then there is nothing. Who's going to tell me I can't repeat what my daddy has to say? If my father is true. So how you cannot say, well, I don't like what you have to say because of your uterus. Your uterus is a problem.
Because of your uterus.
Your uterus is a problem for me. All right. So you're going to essentially deny the words of the Most High because you have a problem with my uterus. Okay? And I need to bow to you because of your penis. Now, I don't know why you don't hear phallic worship in that, but I see phallic worship in that all the time. If you get to come and say whatever you want to say to me because of your Y chromosome. I'm not allowed to ask you any questions because your Y chromosome qualifies you. That's a problem for me. But you can't listen to anything I have to say because you have a problem with my uterus. That's a problem for me.
Okay, so we're saying that from what we're seeing is that there are disqualifications purely on gender. It's not on wisdom. It's not on inclination. It's not on the Most High being with the individual. We have come to a space and time in our restoration that people are being disqualified, not because they're telling the truth or because they're lying, but just because they're either one or the other. And my question is, and I do see that absolutely, absolutely. I have experienced it. I can't speak for everyone, and apparently Sister Mayanah has experienced it as well. But when we see, as we were talking about earlier, in the case of King Josiah, did he subscribe to that thought that the woman was purely disqualified because she had a womb or because she was unclean or because she was invalidated? Do we see even one of the kings who was a very integral part in the restoration of Israel from idolatry, when they recovered the text, do we see that thought process that no, don't go to her purely based on the fact that she's a woman?
Absolutely not. Not only do we not see her being invalidated because of her uterus, she's also not validated by her marriage associations. King Josiah at this time has the cream of the crop in terms of who has legal, lawful understanding and authority in terms of what the laws are. We have high priests and we have scribes. And I want to spend a second to explain to you what a scribe is to the listeners, because we have a negative stigma on scribes due to our experiences in the later testaments. But the scribe is a noble class. The scribe was the class of our people who were responsible for all official documentation. They were the ones who wrote everything down. They were our literate class. So he has the most intelligent people around him. Men. Let's not say people, let's be specific. Men. He has the cream of the crop in terms of intelligence, access, and interpretation of the law. High priest, and scribes. And of all of these men, he finds none of them qualified to authenticate this book of text. He instructs not that she be brought to them, but that they go to her and discuss it with her and see what she has to say. Now let's look at, no, we already see that she's not invalidated, but let's see, are they going to her because her husband is cool, because her husband is an elder? Do we understand who her husband was? Her husband was in control of the wardrobe. That's his job. He was the one who kept the underwear and whatever robe the king had checked. That's not going to validate her ability to authenticate law, because he knows how to put all the underwear in order. That was his job. That was what her husband did. So no one is saying Huldah is absolutely going to be able to authenticate this book of law, have a conversation with me based on what the Most High has in plan with the future and foresight of our Father, and his message to us is going to be because of her husband. There was nothing about her husband's occupation or position that would authenticate or validate her. She was approached because of who she is or who she was, what her connection to the Most High was, and how Josiah understood and perceived her. So no, absolutely not. Josiah was not someone who was caught up on these gender limitations. I wouldn't even say gender expectations. These are gender limitations. Josiah didn't subscribe to that. It's important to look at Josiah because we know about at the period of the kingdom, when the kingdom is split, after the kingdom split, there are 20 rulers on both sides. On the side of the northern kingdom, there are 0 that are ever considered righteous. And there were only 8 or 9 on Judah's side. Josiah is listed among those. Josiah has there's a very, very small number of righteous rulers who are already under a pagan institution. So there's a small number of kings that are considered righteous in the sight of the Most High. Josiah makes that list. So before we say anything about Josiah, let's understand that he belongs to a very small number of people that made the Most High's list. And being such a man, he understood that if the Most High said Huldah had it, Huldah has it.
Correct. For those who may be listening in and want to go back and read that story, you can go back into the book of, and I wrote it down here, one second, of Huldah. That's in the book of Second Kings, the 22nd chapter, and Second Chronicles, the 34th chapter. I like to read the whole thing. You know, sometimes we get too much here, little, did little, and then miss the there a little. So definitely we got Second Kings 22 and Second Chronicles 34. Read definitely about what was going on. Read about who Josiah was, and that the fact that his heart was right before the Most High, and he didn't realize that they were in a high level of idolatry. And when the book of the law was brought to him, and I also find that very interesting, but when the book of the law was brought to him, he wanted to know what does this all mean? And so he went to, and he sent his men to someone who had a connection and was known to have that connection with the Creator, to be able to let him know what that means. So as Sister Mayanah said, that is very important, that we are not taught that you have no place except for the one that I give you, because whatever, and speaking from masculine to feminine, whatever the Most High has for that individual, that is their individual job, and they have to work with it collectively. There are seers, there are prophets, there are prophetesses. You understand what I'm saying? And everyone has their function. But if we hinder each other's function because we want to control one another, or we want to subjugate one another, then we close off the reality of us being able to really even function to our fullest capacity. So that was the definite story of Huldah, and very interesting. Today we're talking about, are you covering? What is a covering? The word for covered in Hebrew is kasa. It has to do with on what level, mental, physical, emotional. We went over those things. So basically, what did I want to say? Let's say, to wrap it up a little bit, this has been an excellent conversation. This has been an excellent conversation. See, the children about to wake up too. So this has been an excellent conversation. And it's not to say, yeah, viva la revolution and revolt and do all of these things. It's to say, if you don't know your principle, then someone can come along and convince you of anything that they want you to believe, and you believe it. You understand what I'm saying? And so it's very good for us to go over these things and come out of these error thinking and error doctrines, to think that if you have something to share, you can only share it under permission. Oh, I'm sorry, that's what I wanted to say. In the case of, and I was looking because I don't remember them saying her name, but in the case of Manoah's wife, which would have been Samson's mother, Allah, or the angel, appeared to her, not once, but twice. And she conveyed that message to her husband. And if he had some of the thought processes that are being taught today, you would hear, girl, shut your mouth and go sit down, and because I didn't give you the permission to be talking to no man in the field. You understand what I'm saying? Interesting. What do you have to say about that?
Well, when we look at Manoah, he hears from his wife this report that someone has come to her. And as a man, he wants to know what's going on. So he goes out there and he gets confronted by the devil. He meets with this malak. And what the malak tells him is important. He said, like I told her.
Okay.
Like I told her, this was going to happen. So he answered Manoah because Manoah asked. But the fact is that the woman had already received the message. He didn't wait for you to come in. I didn't wait for you to come and talk to me first. I already told her. She knows what she has to do. When you look at the account of Samson, the person that made the vow of the Nazarite was not Samson. It was his mother. He was raised as a Nazarite because his mother took that vow when he was in the womb. His mother raised him as a Nazarite. He took no such a vow on his own. That was the instruction of the angel to her, of how she was going to raise this child, and she had to take the vow. It was the vow of his mother that happened first. So this idea that the Most High is not going to deal with his daughter, that the Most High does not have a purpose for his daughter. Samson was in no position to make a vow. He was a baby. He was raised in Nazareth.
Correct.
The thing I wanted to share, I want the sisters at their time and leisure as it permits to read the book of Judith, which is in the Apocrypha. The 8th and 9th chapters are of particular interest because it tells of an account when the people are experiencing a drought and their enemies are encompassing them. They're surrounded by their enemies who intend to kill them, and the princes and the governors are fighting. The princes and the governors dropped something on the people just to kind of stall and delay the time. And Judith, who was a widow, which means her husband is not on the scene, her husband is dead, she doesn't live with her father or her brothers, comes out of mourning and says, bring them to me. And they come. They come to see what Judith has to say. Not because, of anything other than they knew that Judith was on point with her father. Her husband is dead. They're not coming to her because she's a good wife. They're coming to her because she's a good daughter. And they say to her, she doesn't ask them anything. She tells them they were wrong. She checks the spirit that they put out. What you said was wrong. But I tell you what. So what they say to her that, what you have said is true. These men don't buck up against Judith and say, who are you talking to? Do you know who we are? Do you not see this penis? You can't talk to me like that. That's not what happens. They say, you have spoken correctly. You are absolutely right. And we know that if you go to the Father, all the cisterns will be filled. The drought would be over. The Most High will answer you. This is a woman, unmarried. Her husband is dead. Not at her father's house, not with her brother, but they understood her relationship as a daughter to her father. And she said, you know what, not only will I pray for us, the enemies that you're so worried about, the Most High will deliver them through me. In a time frame that you made up. Because they made up a time frame. They faked the funk for the people. And she said, you know what, I'm not going to make you into liars. Within a time frame that you made up, the Father will deliver them through me. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. Through his daughter, this idea that the Most High was not working with, speaking to, or dealing with his daughters are insane. The idea that submission equals being weak or unimportant is insane. I want to give you this verse, because I know we're going to close out before we have the official discussion, but it's found in Ecclesiastes, the 36th chapter, the 24th verse. It says, he that getteth a wife beginneth a possession. Understand that. You understand that. As our roles as wives are necessarily a possession for our husband. He that getteth a wife beginneth a possession. A help like unto himself. So there's it's a help that's like unto himself, which echoes the Genesis that we understand that a woman was made as a help meet for him. It's not help mate, it's not playmate, it's help meet. Meet is a separate word that has a particular meaning. It's found and repeated here in Ecclesiastes. A help like unto himself, not like unto his donkey, but like unto himself, and a pillar of rest. The description of this woman is that she is a pillar, not a pillow, a pillar of rest. She has to be someone that you have to keep strong. If you make her weak, if you weaken her, if you diminish her, if you despise her, she cannot be a pillar for you.
Correct.
Because you have reduced her to rubble. She
Correct.
cannot hold you. How can you rest on her? How can you rely on her? How can she give you any feedback if you have silenced her?
Correct.
If you have hurt her, if you have debased her, if you have diminished her, and if we are accepting these diminutive roles, then we are allowing we are ourselves reducing ourselves to rubble. And we cannot function the way we were told to function. The Most High said, I am making you to be a meet help from my son. If we are accepting these roles of silence, if we are accepting these roles of disconnect, we're not performing what our Father told us to do. It is a unique responsibility given uniquely to women to be meet, to be worthy, suitable, appropriate, to be pillars, like you said, to be a crown, to be all of these things. We're doing none of them. We're accepting being treated like unimportant, undervalued, unacceptable, second-class parts of a narrative that we should never allow ourselves to be reduced to a footnote. We're not a footnote in this narrative.
That is the voice of Sister Mayanah. She just dropped it down right there. That's the lead up we are working on. And everyone who is listening at this point, if you would like to join in this conversation on the panel or just tuning in, we're in the coming, hopefully, days and weeks. We're going to have more conversations like this and ones that we can touch on and definitely go through in a presentation type style. Some of these very important points that she's hitting on. We cannot as she said so eloquently, begin to do what it is that we are supposed to do when we allow ourselves to be subjugated and to buy into a doctrine or ideology that you have no value except for that which I give you. That right there is erroneous. That right there, when she is the one who is with the children, she is the one who builds up the house. A wise woman builds up her house. And if she does not have the tools in which to do so, if she is emotionally, mentally, and spiritually broken, which let's stop fronting, because I'm the, you know what I'm saying? I just keeps it, real. The breaking of the spirit of the women is not the making of a nation. It's the breaking of a nation. You understand what I'm saying? And so we have to look at all of these things, not in rebellion, but to reclaim that which the Most High created you in. And I'll leave you at this. And thanks, Sister Mayanah, so much. And we'll definitely come back with some more topics. If you out there have any topics you would like to discuss in a righteous, upright manner, not the he should, she should, but in a real way in which that we can come to some kind of conclusion to heal those wounds. Definitely, we're open to that. Let's do that. But I just lost the train of thought. The baby's over there. Thing. But if we do not, like I said, if we do not come back in the way, that's what I want to say. The Isaiah or the helpmeet that the Most High made Adam, as you just read in the book of Ecclesiastes, it's not a small matter. She's not a rinky dink. She's not the jump off. She's not the side chick. You understand what I'm saying? She's not the matey, as they say in the Caribbean. She is a strong individual, because in that word Isaiah and the word Kanibdo being in front of her, that word in itself is used to describe the help that the Most High delivers man with. And you can look contextually in this text and see that that word is not a little play, like she say, a playmate. She is supposed to know her job and operate in her function so that she can aid him. And even that also comes in a level of correction when he is not functioning in the way in which that he's supposed to function. And you cannot do that if you're allowing yourself to be marginalized and you're allowing yourself to be told that you only go to where I say that you go. The government that the man is supposed to be ruling the household and society with, that government is supposed to be one that is of the laws, not of any laws that we get to make up on our own. You understand what I'm saying? That word is mashal, if I'm not mistaken, and it's using the Torah as the meter and the yardstick, not my own personal desires and heart's desire to what I want you to do and want you to become so that it be comfortable for me. Oftentimes we're getting in situations, women as well as men are limiting people's growth spiritually because they want to be comfortable. And that might be another show. Sister Mayanah, you have anything else to say before we wrap?
I just want to quickly build on what you stated, going back into Genesis about the men and their relationship to the woman that was given to them. The idea was that it was not good. It was the first thing that the Most High saw that was not good. It was not good for man to be alone, so he creates woman for this purpose. What women do by nature is we reflect. We reflect back to our men. What the man should see when he sees you is his brightest moments. He's supposed to see righteousness when he sees you. And he is falling short. He's supposed to be able to look at you and be reminded of what's supposed to be right. You are supposed to be what incites his feelings of protection. If he knows that he's doing something wrong, but he needs to protect. How many people have you heard in your time say, or men have said, I have been completely saved by the fact that I knew I had to protect my family. I used to hustle in the street. I used to think this was okay. I used to live a very dangerous life. But then I remember that I have a seed in him. I remember that I have things in him. You are supposed to reflect to him what he is supposed to remember. That is your job. And if we know that the Most High said it is not good for man to be alone, if that man is making all of the decisions, if that man is going on his own understanding all of the time, and you are saying nothing, that man is alone.
He's alone. If he has rendered you dumb, and I was doing a little research on that, if he has rendered you dumb and shut your mouth, he's alone. Because that wisdom, which is a feminine principle that you are supposed to exude, not saying that every woman, every time she opened her mouth, let's not get it twisted, are saying all lovely, wise things. You understand? So we have to make sure that we're not the foolish woman. But if you are a wise and respectable and upright woman, if you're not yet, and as we continue to work to that point, if your input is shut down, then like Sister Mayanah says, that man is still alone. And this is why we can see men that have multiple women around him, but still he cannot come to and do the job that the Most High created him to do, because he has rendered them all deaf, dumb, and blind. And so therefore he's still alone, no matter how many people are there.
Well, there you go, sis. There you go.
Now this is a beautiful conversation. Thank everyone who has joined us and tuned in, who will be watching it on the replay. You know, stay tuned for more information coming your way. And definitely, if you have something to add to the conversation, link us up or link me up on Facebook and Moon Yisrael, and I'll join you to the panel and we can have this conversation, because it is time definitely to elevate in the nation. So until next time, thank everyone for tuning in. You can check Sister Mayanah out on Facebook as well. She just wrote an excellent post today. I think everybody should definitely read that over, check it out, and let's have a discussion on that. So until next time, everybody have a blessed day. Shalom.
Shalom.